All right, Hisham, let's take a look at your essay. So, starting with your introduction, there is, hold on, I actually have a Word doc with this. All right, here's what you need to do. Let's talk about how essays need to be structured first. I think this is going to help because you're lacking a little bit of structure with your essay. You want to start with your introduction. Okay, so you go from the broad, kind of very vague, and then you get as specific as you can. So you start with the hook where you introduce the topic, you explain the topic a little bit more, and then you get to your thesis. Your thesis is the claim or position you are taking on the essay. So for this essay in particular, you're either saying, one, mercy killing is ethical, or two, mercy killing is not ethical. And there's something we have called a closed thesis versus an open thesis, okay? So your open thesis has a lot of possibilities, okay? So that is what these theses are. This is an open thesis because it is open for you to talk about whatever you want. An example of a closed thesis would be mercy killing is ethical because of A and B, or mercy killing is not ethical because of A and B. So when you develop your thesis, a closed thesis, if you have this says your body paragraphs are only going to talk about A and B. An open thesis says, well, we're going to talk about how it's ethical or not ethical, and it's just kind of left there. It's open for interpretation. The paper's going to go whatever way it wants to, okay? So with your thesis, introduction. No, let me pull that up. Mercy killing is the act of putting a person or animal to death painlessly or allowing them to die by withholding medical services. So, when you do a hook, I'm not as concerned with a fancy way to introduce it, but what I would like to see are certain types of hooks to avoid. And one to avoid in particular are those dictionary definitions. If you're starting a paper about a particular topic that will eventually need to be defined, do not start the paper that way. So don't start with a definition, okay? So it's fine if you explain it or define it later, but do not start with the definition. And then you move on in Mice and Men. So the book is Of Mice and Men. So make sure you have that title right. You start with an example. I don't know who Robin is when Robin's dog was sick because it was Candy's dog. So I'm not sure where you're getting Robin from, but hopefully by the time you see this, or maybe during the day, we'll talk more about this name and where it's coming from, if you know what I'm talking about. But anyways, so you say, oh, this is a good example of killing because she was going to suffer further. And then if George did not kill Lenny, Curly would have. Curly would have taken an instant kill shot. So the purpose of your introduction, you don't really want to use too many examples. You want to be very specific with what the topic is. So the examples are fine, just not in the introduction. And then you don't have a thesis, you don't have your claim, but I see it right here. Mercy killing should be allowed. So you are talking about and taking the claim that it is ethical, but that needs to be at the end of your introduction, okay? So let's look into these body paragraphs. Mercy killing should be allowed because it decreases the spread of diseases when a person is sick. The longer the duration that the individual is kept alive, it may increase the risk of others being affected by the disease that the individual has handled properly. Good. So you have kind of an evidence here. This is why it should be allowed. What you would need to add, let me find it up here, is you add 2 articles. I'm going to let you know this in video, as well as the amount of times I've said this in class. When you are absent, there is the absent folder for first and second hour. It's in the back of the class. You did not grab these articles. which is a problem. There was this one and one about Kevorkian. So I'm hoping someone showed you the articles, and we'll see as we go through your paper. But you need to make sure you are checking that with how often you have been missing / been tardy. Make sure you're looking at that. Because when we look at your essay, you are talking about it, but you don't really have enough evidence or analysis, okay? And then you have the part of it affecting the spread of disease, and then you move into how it relieves suffering, which is good. It allows them to end their life comfortably, and all this analysis and stuff is really true. The problem is, as I've said before, you are not referencing the articles, and you are not referencing any analysis. So what I'm writing on your brick right now needs evidence from articles, and you're going to see this like either the day after the video or sometime after. You need evidence from the article, and you need analysis. You don't have any analysis here. You need to explain more about why this should be allowed. So yes, it alleviates symptoms and may leave them in a state of sedation. So if they're sedated, talk more about what mercy killing will offer them. And then we get into your opposition. There's reasons why it shouldn't be allowed because people think that suffering is part of being human. That's a really strong sentence, okay? It is how life is expected. Also, medication can be improved to help a person's quality of life and make their death as humane as possible. So, with this, you don't have enough on why the opposition is wrong. So you talk a little bit. Also, it's 3 sentences, which is not enough. So if you're bringing up the opposition, you also need evidence and analysis that supports why the opposition is wrong. Okay? So moving on to the end. Mercy killing is better than suffering. Good way to start the conclusion. One can just get life over with and not feel all the pain. Mercy killing is also better because diseases will not spread to everyone. Dr. Jack Kevorkian, sorry for the missaying. When your conscience says law is immoral, don't follow it. Grammar-wise, you can get rid of these quotation marks. In quixotically trying to conquer death, doctors all too frequently do no good for the patient's ease, but at the same time they do harm instead by prolonging and even magnifying patients' disease. Doctors are allowed and equipped to help ease patients' pain. You need a persevere, pain and suffering. So why not allow mercy killings? Mercy killings is also a way to help alleviate pain and suffering. So I would say your conclusion is pretty much your strongest part of the essay, okay? Okay, so I just paused the recording and now I'm resuming it. I don't quite remember what I just said, but I think I just said something about this being your strongest paragraph, and I think it is. And I think Mrs. Hickey told me this is the one she helped you with, so I would not be surprised about that. But overall, grammar-wise, I think you need to focus on your verb form. So mercy killings are instead of is, because mercy killing is a plural noun, and with plural nouns you need to use a singular verb, and the singular verb is are. Good quotes that you're using. You have some good components in here, but what it really comes down to is you did not use any evidence or analysis, and that is what I'm missing from you. So as you move on to your next essays, make sure you are not only checking the absent folders for when you are not there, but make sure you're incorporating those articles when you do have them, okay?